Good morning. This is Sweetie Berry with the Women of Dare Whimsy, and today we're talking about twice gifted. Twice giftedness is a term that legally means something in the public school systems in the United States, but it also means something in the medical community. And twice gifted means that you have been identified as having gifted thinking abilities, but you also have a secondary condition or secondary qualifying strength or weakness. And part of the gifted life is that there's so much positive to the gifted life that sometimes when there is a secondary condition or a secondary qualifying process of your life, whether it's a gift or a talent, some of the challenges of that become discounted because, after all, you're smart. You can figure it out. We're going to be talking today about what some of those challenges as a gifted woman can be, or a creative woman. Some of those challenges are things like attention deficit or high energy exuberance, or a passion for your craft, the ability to track well, the ability for time management. Sometimes twice giftedness means a specific learning disability, or it may be something like I have, low vision, where I may have high intelligence, but I also have low vision. That presents some special challenges to my life. Sometimes it may be a qualifying medical condition like depression, or it may be something like diabetes, or it could be blindness or visual impairment. So there's just a whole different realm of gifted behavior and creative behaviors that affect us, that really do. And one of the things as an educator, as a teacher, as a mom, as a person who personally has this in their life, twice giftedness, I really want to talk with the other girls about how they handle that in their life and the lives of their children. One of the things that always amazes me is how many strengths we bring to each other when we dialogue. The whole reason between us girls exist from the Women of Dare Whimsy is because we need each other. We're better together. And when we share our experiences, when we share our awarenesses, when we share the methods and the madness that we go through to make life work, we, one, don't feel alone anymore. That isolation can be a deadly thing for a gifted and creative girl. The second thing is we bring great experiences to the table. Just like Gail Roddy would say, we're having the wellspring of life brought to the well by all the generations of women who come before us and who will come after us by sharing our stories. And most importantly, we learn. We learn from each other. We learn that we are more than enough. We learn that whatever the situation is, it's just a situation. It's not the core of our being. We learn that we're not alone. And it's so important to share these stories for that reason. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Gail, you're going to get a PhD today, apparently, Miss Gail Roddy. I'm going to put you in the spot. But Gail Roddy, I know that you personally are a creative with high sensibilities, and you have the ability to just perceive things very cleanly with other people around you, but that presents a twice-gifted challenge for you because as an empath or someone who has the ability to really feel and experience other people's energies and auras and their emotions, what does that do to your life, and what does it do in conversation with others?
Well, hi there, sweetie, ladies. It's so true, sweetie, what you were saying is that the thing that I have learned over the years is one of the things we gifted girls may not realize is that our challenges with our gift, we don't really necessarily always understand that they are challenges because there's so much a part of us, and we don't realize that everyone doesn't have these challenges, such as the ADHD you mentioned. The visual impairment, that's something that's a little bit easier to discern. But there are other things that we may not necessarily realize that is part of the gifted thing that we are, and it is a challenge because we're so up to just accepting this challenge. This is who we are, this is how we deal, and we don't understand necessarily that other people don't have these same challenges. For myself, I'm very empathic, and that was something that I didn't even understand until maybe, say, the last 10 or 15 years, because I would think that I was coming home after encountering a group or a person, say, over lunch, and I would feel all these emotions, and I would have to stop and say, okay, what's going on with you, Gail? Why are you feeling this sadness? Why are you feeling this euphoria? Why are you feeling this passionate displacement? And I would think it was me, and finally I realized, no, I was literally absorbing these emotions from the people around me. That was a real awakening because I just thought it was me. It was just me. So I understand that now, that as gifted girls, we have these challenges that we really don't understand that are challenges. And that's why something like what you've created here, Dare Whimsy, is just a wonder for me to be able to talk these things out, to have one of the other women of Dare Whimsy say, you know, that's my experience. Or Gail, here's really what's going on with you. Oh, wow, thanks, Sarah. I didn't even realize that's what was happening.
That's such a nice and kind thing to say, but such a true thing for me, because it just matters so much that I hear from all of you that, hey, that's my experience too, or have you tried this, or something else. You know, I want to share with you all a story that when I was young, I lived in a small town in Gurdon, Arkansas, and I have a very nearsighted mother and a very nearsighted set of grandparents, and I was very nearsighted very early on, like by year 3, I couldn't see things. In fact, I didn't know that trees had leaves until I got to 2nd grade and someone put a pair of glasses on me. And you know, they took me at age 4 to get my eyes checked, thinking that, like my brothers, I might be nearsighted, but I was a memorizer and I'm a visual artist. And so I had long since my dad was a doctor, memorized the poster on the wall at the doctor's office of what those letters were, because I stood in the chair in front of it all the time and stared at them. I love to do calligraphy and I love to look at letters. And so I would stand on this chair in front of the eye chart, and I had that sucker memorized. So when they took me at that time to a program to read and to see if I could see the letters, not only did I do it, I did it perfectly, completely missing the gap that I had about 2,700 vision. So what you're seeing at 20 feet and could see at 700 feet, I couldn't see at 20. And so I went to kindergarten and 1st grade, and I got in trouble all the time in 1st grade because they would give you a reader and a primer, and they would say, "See Dick run," or whatever the sentence was, and I would add, adjectives to it. "See the beautiful boy on the blue bike run." And the teacher would say, "Oh, she's creative, but I only want you to read the words." And so I would try again, and I would change the words to be the number of words I thought I was seeing, and I wouldn't be able to see the words because I couldn't see. And so I'd do it again. And so I had finally learned that I could literally pick up the reader like this and put my face this close, and I could see. Well, you would think that they would then realize I'm not seeing, but they'd taken me to a doctor, and they'd taken me to the school nurse, and I could read the eye chart every time. So they would just say, stop being silly. Stop being silly, sit up straight and read right. You know what? 2nd grade, my teacher figured out that I couldn't see. Now, I had always been a high-energy girl, and so I've always had skin knees. I've always run into things. I've always been on the go, 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 which leads to a lot of bumps. But in 2nd grade, they figured out that not only was I not seeing, but I really wasn't seeing. And they brought me home with glasses that had to be ordered for 2 weeks. I couldn't even make them in the labs because they were so thick. In fact, they put me in contacts at that age to try and stop the progression of the nearsightedness, hard lenses. 2nd grade with hard lenses. I remember that moment that I found out that trees had leaves, that the sky had clouds, that the sun had rays, because I had never seen that before, not in my memory. So many times our gifted kids are so compensating by memorizing or by listening auditorily and memorizing and parroting back to us that we don't even recognize a gifted kid has a problem till a lot further down the road than a regular non-gifted kid would do, because they fake us out. It's not unusual for me as a teacher to be brought into a school district as an educator to evaluate a kid who's 7th grade. We find out he never learned to read. He never learned to read, that he's looked like he's reading. He knows how to stance himself. He knows how to look the part. He knows how to memorize passages 2 days before he's called out in class to read, figure out when it'll be his turn, so that he doesn't let out the secret that he can't read. That is a gifted behavior sometimes, and it's just amazing how many times we forget that intelligence does not take over the space of skills. You can be very smart, but if you don't own a skill, man, it's hard to get over that. Dr. Edith, how does twice gifted abilities show up in the world that you work with gifted and multi-talents?
Well, and then you add to the fact that in my world, and as my experience as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, twice gifted is a fairly common thing I've dealt with over the years. And then I also have it personally in a very vivid example within my family. So the twice giftedness is something I'm quite familiar with, but the biggest thing that I guess that really frustrates me is that it's either or. We either deal with the giftedness or we deal with the disability, and we don't see that we have abilities and disabilities in all people. And so looking at either or doesn't let us deal with the whole person. And it does, the gifted, high intelligent, high abilities is very, very important. And many a times then there's also the misdiagnosis. So we talk about, like you were told, sweetie, that quit being silly and get things done, or quit being too emotional, we'll hear a lot. And so, oh, you're really high today, you're really low in 10 minutes later. You've got to be manic depressive or bipolar, depending on which diagnosis and which DSM you're looking at. And so we get then the misdiagnoses where, yet at the same time then, we can be misdiagnosed by saying, oh, you're just overexcitable or over-emotional, and not recognize and honor the fact that, no, there's also the component of major depression here. So being able to actually look at the individual, decide what their individual characteristics are, both abilities and challenges that they face, is important for us, and it's important for us. Gail, as you were saying, understanding that that's part of who you are, that it is different, and how then do we want to be able to express ourselves with that talent, whether that be an ability or disability. How do we want to express ourselves? And if we understand it and understand how we're wired and understand how that may be different from others, or it may be different than in our approach on how we express or learn, is important to have that understanding and that knowledge, so then we can learn the accommodations and strategies to have the expression that we so desire by choice, to interact with ourselves to start with, and then with others too, and the world around us. How can we then express our passions, express our desires, express the things that are so important to us, and explore those interests that are wide and variety for us? It really matters to understand both our strengths, our weaknesses, be able to acknowledge them, and then learn the strategies and the accommodations that are necessary to express who we are as a whole person. A whole person is the key thing for me.
I love that. I love the fact that there are abilities even in the disability definitions. One of my clients, Dr. Peter Flon, who has a nonverbal learning disability, which really doesn't mean that he doesn't talk. He actually is very verbal. It means that he doesn't process verbalisms to him the same way that I might. In some ways that means that he has a critical thinking that's wide open, because he doesn't perceive the words you say to be the end answer. So he is really looking as a strategist and as a statistician differently at the problem without the verbals interfering with his thinking process. But likewise, it's a disability as well, because his relationships have a lot of strain on them when he doesn't have the same cues from verbal language and intonation as other people do. He always says, I'm not learning, I don't have a learning disability, I am disabled in learning. And for him, he wants it to be very clear that it's not, he learns differently, but he does. But he wants you to know that he can't change that. It's not something he can fix. It's not something he can choose to be different about, any more than I can choose for my eyes to see differently. I can correct them better with glasses or contacts. I may be able to do things that help strengthen them to work together. But it's something I can't change. I learned one of the fastest lessons in learning disabilities when I was about 17. I was at Aldersgate Med Camps in charge of a group of children with deafness. And they talked well to me with sign language. They looked well to me. They were energetic and healthy kids and happy and laughing. And, we were just having a great time at camp. And I was their counselor. And then it got time to run the foot race. And the other counselors who did not have children with deafness were saying, "Go to run to the bar, and they'll blow my whistle, and you'll run back." And I thought, well, that sounds great. And then as my children ran in front of me with excited faces, I realized they would never hear the whistle. You know, that's a different life than someone who hears the whistle and runs back. So suddenly I got to run a lot faster than they do, catch up and get them turned back at the bell because I knew that they weren't ever going to hear me and we were going to run forever. Twice disabled, which is twice exceptional, which is the way school districts talk about that, really has meaning. It is exceptional. It is different. It is somehow past what other people are experiencing or not to where other people are experiencing. And one of the things I want to say cleanly today as schools about to start, and some of you are parents and some of you are teachers, because someone is gifted or able or very able in one area of their life does not mean they're able at all. I know for me personally, I'm from a family of very gifted boys. All right, they are so smart. As adults, they're super smart, and they are not learning disabled, and they are not twice exceptional. They are just flat out smart and athletic and together and communicative and all that space. So the assumption was very often that we were all that. I'm not. I'm very bright and I'm highly creative, but I'm very visually impaired. I can have correction to certain levels with certain kinds of glasses. You'll see me, if you're around me long, wear different glasses throughout the day for different kinds so that I can be legal to drive in one. And I have one that allows me to use cameras because it's a completely different prescription. And in my case, they can't make it a trifocal or something to make it all one. And then you'll see me do another one if I'm cooking so I could read the recipe. And even yet a fourth one if I'm in bright light because light really affects the way I see. People who know me, I'm very verbal, and so a lot of what I do in teaching and training and facilitating is I'm talking, and I'm using overhead projectors, and I'm using PowerPoints, I'm using 40-foot screens, and people can assume that I can focus on what I'm talking about and pointing to, but the truth is I memorize those slides. I don't even know what it says, even if I'm up close on those 40-foot screens. And so a lot of times you'll see me out in public arenas where I'm speaking or where I'm training, and someone will walk me to the podium. You know why? Because I don't see depth. I don't see the end of the stage. If they have a brown stage and brown seats out in front, which often is the case with old auditoriums, I'll just walk off the stage because I don't see the end of it. I can see about 8 feet in front of my feet, and that's it. And so we have learned that it's very good to have someone walk me on and up the stairs because I don't see them. And I don't keep that a secret. Obviously not today, I put it on the internet. But at the same time, it's something that all of my years growing up, I was very secretive about. I was ashamed of not being able to see as though I wasn't trying hard enough. You know, twice exceptionality brings so much to the table when we recognize it and can engage our strengths and become aware of our challenges. And that's one of the things that I think Sarah Cook does so well in talking. In fact, she even does tapes for people to just affirm to them what their strengths are and to give them permission to accept their challenges and to take them from a different stance. Sarah, it's so good to have you with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I know that you have firsthand knowledge of what it's like to set exceptionally high expectations for yourself and in your family, to understand what it's like to have someone who has a chronic illness set exceptionally high expectations for himself. And yet you've learned with your children and with your husband, with your extended family, to really, and particularly your sales team, to really accentuate the positive and own the awareness of what's harder. Talk to us about that.
You know, it's interesting as we were all having our conversations and sharing, I remember being first on social media, and I set up my Twitter account, and I was kind of afraid. Social media was new to me in 2008. Actually, yeah, 2008. It was December at that time. I was taking a video class because my son wanted to learn how to do video production and wanted a YouTube channel, and I was a little nervous about the internet. And so I decided to take the class with him. And so I remember setting up my Twitter account, and my first Twitter account was called Miss Vibrant. And the reason why I chose Miss Vibrant is because I've struggled with depression for many, many, many years. And I made a conscious choice that on social media I would only share positive, uplifting, wonderful things, and that I wasn't going to be a drag on social media. I mean, I wasn't going to be a letdown. I wasn't going to, you know, dump and share all these problems. I was going to be a source for good. And that was a conscious choice. And eventually I changed from Miss Vibrant to Raising CEO Kids because we were writing a book. And then I decided that, you know, with Sweetie's help as my strategist, decided that I was going to be myself. I was going to be Sarah L. Cook. But I've consistently maintained this positive, gratitude-filled, uplifting voice on social media, and that voice has allowed me, even in hard times, to come back to what's positive. Does every day look like, rainbows and roses? No. It absolutely doesn't look like rainbows and roses, but the practice of gratitude has allowed me to maintain this voice. It's uplifted a lot of people. And if you really are in tune with my social media, you really, really track that, sometimes you notice that I might be silent, maybe for a few hours, maybe for even a few days, maybe for a few weeks. If it's been a few weeks, I have friends that will call me out on isolation. But it might be a couple days, and that's probably because something really hard is happening in our family with health, or maybe I'm struggling personally with some really hard stuff with anxiety or depression. And I just don't know what to say that's positive. And so I'm in prayer, and I'm in scripture, and I'm in meditation, and I'm in doing mandalas, and I'm doing all these things that are trying to help bring me back into this place of joy and gratitude and love and hope and light. But I'm just not there yet. And one thing I've learned, one of my really big weaknesses, is that I do go into isolation. As a perfectionist, if I'm struggling, I feel like I don't want to bring anybody else down with that depression. I don't want to, I don't want to disappoint people. I'm afraid that maybe it's my fault that I'm struggling with these things. And really important when you have struggles, long-term illness, or children with disabilities, or spouses that, when you have these things that are not just going to go away tomorrow, or not just going to go away in a few hours, when you have long-term, decades worth of challenges, it's important to build a support network. It's important to surround yourself with people, with books, with music, with art, with aesthetic beauty. It's important to create a place of solace that you can go and retreat to restore and renew and heal and refresh. And it's key. It's absolutely key. So I'm grateful for Dare Whimsy, because it is that place. Sweetie and I were talking just the other day about how I'm so grateful to have a place where we're not all the same. We're completely different individuals. We're from different walks of life. We have different color skin. We have different color hair and eyes. And, we like different music. Everything's different about us, except for that we're women. And that we have some gifted abilities. We also have some gifted, quote, disabilities. But it's a very safe place. And I've needed that. I've needed that this last year. And I've especially needed it this last few months. So thank you for letting us be together, sweetie. I thank you for having the courage to do something that probably was out of your comfort zone at the time and maybe felt a little crazy, but that you were willing to embrace the crazy and willing to be courageous and willing to maybe mess up and allow it to be whatever it was, because it's becoming, it already is something beautiful, but it's becoming something even more beautiful as we share our gifts, as we're vulnerable with our weaknesses, and as we allow ourselves to be perfectly imperfect.
Love that. Thank you so much for the kind words. It was scary to do this. It was really scary to say from the beginning that I'm going to do this out loud, and we're going to do it on video, and we're going to share the whole of us. I'm going to share my whole heart, not just the publicly appropriate one. And it's bumpy sometimes. It really is, because when you share your whole heart, people really have opinions on that in social media, and they really DM you, and they really call you out sometimes about things that they see differently than you do. But one of the things that I think is important that we need to hear the message of for people who may have twice exceptional things in their life is that you have every right to do life your way. Okay? As long as you're not harming someone else, as long as you're not harming yourself, you have rights to do life your way. And particularly in the educational system, the academic system, you may need to advocate for yourself, or you may need to become the advocate for your child. I have a child who has a significant learning disability. And you know what? Her intelligence is very high too. Surprise, surprise. And we've had to say things to teachers and to organizations. You know what? I know you don't allow calculators, but she will use one, because we know that she has dysgraphia, and that means that she doesn't see numbers the same way you do. So if you call out the problem, or if she takes her aide with her so that she can have the numbers read out loud to her, she can perform at college level. But if you expect her to see the numbers, she will miss 35 to 40% of those because she sees the numbers backwards or the wrong number. And that's not fair to her. To assume that she's ignorant or she's not qualified for college or she wasn't qualified for the math team because she has to have things done auditorily is not right. So we've had to really become her advocate, and we had to say to her, yeah, become your own advocate. You know what? She went to college with her brother when she was literally not even in high school, and she answered the questions better orally than the college kids do. And it really gave her an understanding that this is just a disability. It is not her. It's not the definition of her. She's bright, she's creative, she's friendly, and she's our wise child. And so we just love that about her. But we had to understand as parents, first of all, because the whole world says if you can't multiply your multiplication tables, you must be dull. Well, she doesn't memorize that way. She understands that 3 times 3 is 3 sets of 3, and she can tell you the answer is 9. But rote memorization for her is not there. It just isn't. That instant recall, not there for her. She has kind of an aphasic. So we have to understand where our strengths are. For me, if I see it and I'm able to use my glasses to see it, man, I've got it. I have a picture memory vocabulary. So if I just see it, I can reread it in my mind. But the problem is I can't see 90% of what you put in front of me unless it's exactly the right distance from me. So I have to know that about myself. I have to know that if someone's trying to teach me visually that I either have to set up a large screen or I have to be ready to see it at the screen that I can see it from. People send me text messages and I just go nuts because my phone is only this big. And for me to get it big enough for me to read it, it takes a lot unless I take off my glasses and put my nose to it. So you'll see on my Instagram and sometimes you'll see it on my phone that my husband has pictures of me doing this. And he thinks it's so funny because I have one eye that works. And if I put it right on that space, I can see really clearly. And so people who pass us in the night in the car when I'm checking for a message or something, they're like, "Woo, what's with her and her phone?" You know, he keeps saying I'm having an affair with my screen. But we have to know that about ourselves, and we have to know that if people's energy affects us and they're toxic, that maybe we need to restrict and have boundaries on how often we're with that wide open because it may make us toxic. If we have something that we do super well, I know like Dr. Edith does amazing creativity, and her facilitation of workshops using her puppets and using her voices and her costumes are high creative, and they're high productive for her. You know, some people may say, what is she doing dressing up doing that? You know what? She's teaching, and she's opening the door for people who can't hear it in a different way to hear things that are very serious about their lives and very useful about their lives, and that matters. It's just such an important thing to understand that twice giftedness is really just that. It's a way of understanding ourselves better. It's a way of becoming aware of our strengths and those areas that may challenge us. It's a way for us to know that, you know what, we're not just going nuts. That really exists. And for so many people, whether it be depression or attention deficit or hyperactivity or issues like diabetes, physical issues like cerebral palsy, these are challenges of life, but that doesn't mean that the gifts of your giftedness and creativity aren't still there. And we applaud you for facing that. We applaud you and encourage you to come share it with us at Dare Whimsy. And as often as we can, if we have anything to add to the conversation that may be of use for you, we're here for you. We want to know you. On Thursdays, we have a post in our blog that talks more on this conversation. None of us are gurus, and we're all different personalities in different regions of the country and different ages and different areas of expertise. And if you may want to follow us home to our space if something speaks to you in our sister post. And we want to speak to your posts too. So be sure and comment either on our Facebook wall at Dare Whimsy or to comment in the blog and let us follow you home too. We want to know more about you and your gifted life and the adventures of living gifted. Thanks so much for being with us this week. We look forward to being with you again next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Have a great day.